I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight, we're speaking with Rosemary Valenti Guarnera. She has written an amazing book. It is called Me and the General. In the book, she unravels the intricate life of Ralph Liguori, a man who found himself enmeshed in the notorious Charles Lucky Luciano and the politically ambitious Thomas E. Dewey. Through personal accounts and interviews, the biography delves deep into Liguori's transformation from a grief-stricken child of the Roaring Twenties to a pivotal figure in the shadowy realms of organized crime. We are delighted to have this very talented author join us here today on Spotlight. We thank the team at Olympus Storyhouse for helping us put her in the spotlight today. And we ask viewers like you to support writers like her by subscribing to our channel. Rosemary, great to see you today.
It's a great opportunity. I'm flattered that you like the book and the story, but I think it's a historical thing, so it should be known. It should be known, not because I did it, but it should be known, the story.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's an intriguing story, the story of Ralph Liguori's life. And the loss of his father actually helped shape the trajectory of his life, correct?
Correct. I'll just tell you as brief as I can, because Lucky Luciano has always been, people interested. Beginning when I was working, how I met him in Rome, I had just temporarily opened up a travel agency called the European Coach and Travel. And, all the travel agency had drivers who would go to the airport and meet the client. And all the clients, all the drivers knew each other. Mm-hmm. And so great talk between two drivers. And this man, came up and said, Ralph, and said, what are you guys talking about? Blah, 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 blah. Let's get to work or something like that. And he said, oh, no, he works for an American. Well, then Ralph, who was exiled and was dying to go back to America, he said, yeah, oh, well, I want to meet her. Well, well, when he found out I was Sicilian, well, he had to meet me, So anyway, Saturday afternoons where he would come and he would talk to me as a friend, but he was always studying me. Studying me. Who is this chick? And that's the story. And then he told me how this Lucky Luciano was interested in those days to the film department. There was Martin Gauche. I don't know if you knew of him. He was very famous years and years ago. And he was always after Lucky Luciano to do his story. And of course, Lucky was not about to do that. Mm-hmm. So now Lucky is in Rome, and so Gauche follows him there. And finally, Lucky says, okay. So he calls Ralph, who at that time had been a very close friend of his, and said, Ralph, the guy's going to come, I want you to come and see me. Well, that's where it's very famous that Lucky Luciano died in the bar drinking, and he had a heart attack. Well, of course, all the newspapers and everything else says, oh, the guys got rid of him, one way or another. But it's not true, because Lucky was ill with the heart. Well, Ralph was heartbroken, and he was in no mood for storytelling. 10 years later, Martin Gauche contacts Ralph. And because, there's that 10 years year where then people can say what they want to say a little bit. And so Ralph was, yes, because he wanted to tell the story, because he was framed, he was framed with them. And so that's when I really got to meet him. And so when Lucky and Ralph said, okay. And so I did meet with the lawyers and so forth. It was a thing that was really going to be okay. Believe the fate. Martin Gauche dies preparing to go to the airport to Rome. Wow. So now everything is out, and everyone knows, the media, everybody knows, the writers, and so they're all American and Italians are all after Ralph, for the story. They're going to do this famous story, and Ralph couldn't trust the soul. Right. And he says to me, Rosemary, you write it. Well, it was my dream. I was always a writer, but it was my dream for my first book, and I said, well, Ralph, I don't know, blah, blah, blah. No, I you got to do it. And that's how I got it. And so do. I had to start with 2 years of putting it on tape, which I still have. And
Mm.
I lived, in Rome. I would go back and forth to the States, and then I would always stop in New York and do research, of of the trial. I wanted,
Mm.
and that's what I did. For years. I did this. I kept,
Mm.
and anyway, on his deathbed, and it was just the family and myself, and he called me over and took my hand, and he said, "Rosemary, the book," and I
Mm.
promised. And so my life has been involved with this book,
Yeah.
just but so I'm very grateful. I'm very grateful because it was, you know, made it's been interesting to people and stuff. But my goal was to get Ralph's name cleared. That's what he wanted,
Hmm.
and that was for me to make a big thing out of this 1936 New York trial.
Mm.
Some reviewers who talked very well about the book and blah blah blah. A couple of them said that I did too much on the trial, but
Right.
I did, because the more I did it, the more specific, all the little things, that made it, what it was. Well, that's about it as far
Yeah.
as that goes. And so that's it. And I've tried to keep my promise, because although I was grateful that I, as an author, was interviewed as wonderful, but I didn't keep my promise. His name is still out there. See,
Yeah.
to get it out there, we have to get this trial out there. And
Right.
so I'm sort of, working on that right now. So that's about it. I
Yeah.
don't know book itself. If you have any questions, I don't know.
Oh, yeah. When did you meet Ralph, and when did you start documenting his story?
Well, he died in 1981.
Okay.
Seven late. I have it written, but my memory. But he died. It was late 70s.
Right. So it's a long time ago. When did you actually write the book?
Well, all these years,
Yeah.
all I can tell you is when I first had it published. When I felt that it was, time to do it, because I was very particular, about writing it, and it took time. And I wanted, I couldn't fool around. I had to be truthful, because it was a nonfiction book. And then, of course, I got to learn about Ralph's life and how he got involved. And
Mm.
Ralph itself, apart from this 1936, trial, Ralph's life itself is very interesting, because it's a story of immigrants in that era, because it's about the Roaring Twenties and
Mm.
Depression, and when a lot of people, Americans, were Italians, now we're talking about. Although Ralph's family was wealthy, he was
Mm.
in Rome, and 6 months later he went to America. He never knew he was born in Rome. The family never told him. So, but I am not defending Lucky or any of those guys, but those, and I have one of the chapters of Lucky for when he went to school. They all made fun of him when he was in school. He couldn't speak Italian. He didn't know anything. They would put him in the back, but he liked the Jewish guys. They were smart,
Mm.
up to them. You know. And of course, as life went on, they were always his buddies. Well, Mr. Crawford, there's a lot to say,
Yeah.
because his life, and not when after his father died. Well, then that's when it all began, because the family was a great family, and then he got interested. He had to make money, and then he got into this, and then the first guy he met, the what you might call it, that he got involved with was Frankie Yale. And
Hmm.
I made a note because that's so much to remember. Frankie Yale was the head of the Sicilian organization.
Hmm.
He was the boss before Lucky got in to be this big guy.
Right.
And
Right.
so Ralph has, and Yale loved him, and took care of him. When he died, Ralph promised him that he would take care of Yale's son. And then there's a lot of stories about, how that happened. So there's a lot of his biography, which, leads, the hard time that, that's why some of the guys went badly, they had no money, they didn't know so they got connected,
Right.
with
Right.
organizations.
Yeah.
So
The Great Depression apparently played a big role in it. It influenced Ralph's choices to get involved with the rackets, right?
absolutely, and I think the book also brings that out, that light that everybody went through. But Ralph was a wonderful, good-looking guy, good personality. Like he was a terrific dancer, and Rudolph Valentino was his pal. They used to go dancing together, and he was a good friend of George Raft and Spencer Tracy when they go to the hotel and the Greenwich Village bars and talk and stuff. Oh, everybody loved him
Yeah.
from like and of course Lucky just fell in love with him. But he wanted a Lucky, he wanted Ralph to join, but Ralph would never join.
Mm.
But friends to the bitter end, and there's so much to say about that. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I'm not. Okay.
Have you envisioned this as a movie at all? Because it seems like there's so much there. Like you said, Rudolph Valentino and George Raft, and Ralph was a good-looking guy, and Lucky Luciano. It sounds like it'd be an incredible story to put on film, don't you think?
Oh, there's their life in jail.
Yeah.
That's fantastic too. The first Catholic church in a in a jail. That's in itself another story. And they were together, and of course in jail, Lucky was the boss. And there's stories about that. And well, there's a lot to be said. And it's all the way to the bitter end of Lucky's death, and Ralph taking over when he went to Rome. Then there's the portion of Rome, Italy,
Mm.
to bring his name back.
Mhm.
He became the number one club and restaurant guy in Rome, Italy.
Wow.
He became a friend to the police. They loved him. They knew that it was a frame up.
Yeah.
I'm talking. I'm not. I guess I'm here for that, but I don't know.
Thomas E. Dewey was another man who played a role in his life and Liguori and Luciano's life as well, right? Tell us a little bit about the relationship with Thomas E. Dewey.
Well, Thomas E. Dewey. Okay, now that is the fantastic part. Thomas E. Dewey came from a wonderful family, blah, blah, blah. And he was a prosecutor with big ideas. He wanted to be governor and president of the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he was very good with the small racketeers. He was dabbling in that, okay? But how am I going to be president of the United States? I got to get the big guy.
Mm.
That's how it was. He was really terrible. He organized this whole thing. Ralph got involved because they wanted Ralph, to squeal on him. And Ralph's girlfriend at the time, she was on narcotics, and they got to her, and she squealed. And
Mm.
anyway, they even offered money to Ralph. Okay,
Mm.
and he went to Dewey's office. People don't know this because you don't talk bad about Dewey in those days.
Right.
He was offered 20 grand,
Wow.
and Ralph said, "I don't squeal on my buddies," and so
Mm.
he got involved, and
Yeah.
so Dewey got him left and right, called him names, destroyed his,
Mm.
and the judge. It's really a fantastic story. The trial in itself. The judge was pro Dewey, okay? And when they when they were exiled in jail, isn't it interesting that the judge went to visit them? You know,
Mm.
where it tells really the story is when they're both exiled in Rome. Thomas E. Dewey goes to visit Lucky
Mm.
because how did he become governor?
Right.
Yeah. It's a terrible story,
Yeah.
but true.
Right.
Those, the guys that thought that they were, lily white, they were not so lily white,
Mm.
And so he became governor, and he went to visit Lucky, and of course, Ralph wanted to meet him. You know,
Mm.
that's a big scene. And the police of Rome did everything. They loved because they knew that Ralph was innocent. Anyway, it goes on, and so
Yeah.
I don't know how
No,
much more you.
it's interesting stuff. What was it like in prison for Ralph and Luciano?
What was it like? What?
What was it like in prison for those two men, Ralph and Luciano, in prison?
Terrific. Lucky Luciano had the kitchen. He was the boss of the kitchen, and they had a place up on the hill where all the boys went. And Ralph had a good side job too, and and then he had a wonderful relationship with the priest,
Mhm.
and this is very important. So Ralph took instructions to become a better Catholic, and all that. And
Mhm.
he never was confirmed or a communion or something. And Charlie said, "Don't worry, no, a confirmation was, I think." And Charlie said, "Don't worry about it." He says, "I will be your godfather."
Mhm.
So Luciano was in effect Ralph Liguori's godfather also. So they were very close. So this, so the book reveals this very tight relationship because then Ralph had a little bit of side, negative effects because he felt that maybe Lucky should have done more to help him, perspective things. But Lucky, they couldn't break this relationship, no matter what they're true to each other. I think it's a fascinating because
Yeah.
it, apart from Ralph and working on this book for so many years and getting to know, there's that song, Getting to Know You.
Yeah.
Uh, Luciano, is really not that horrible person that the movies and everything have of him. They have
Mhm.
a rat think. Uh, he was the boss. He knew what was going on, and occasionally he did have to tell people, you got to get rid of this guy. You got to get. But apart from that, basically, he was good, and he finally, at the end, found a wonderful woman, which is, and I think it's a good nonfiction, true, a true story about people in that era. But it's a long book, and it will take time to to reveal everything. I've been told it's good. It would be good for a TV series or something like
Mhm.
that because there's
Yeah.
so much.
Especially you've got so much documented. You have interviews, you have tapes, you have a lot of material. Yeah.
So to do the book justice, the story, not the book, the
Right.
story. Um, you'd have to have it. You couldn't do it in a film like that. You
Right.
story everything, and you'd have to break it all up. So I'm not I'm not in a hurry,
Yeah.
when someone that is interested. That's fine. Well, did I talk too much?
No, not at all. Not at all. Tell us a little bit about Ralph and Luciano during their time in exile. Any fantastic adventures happened during that time?
Oh, you mean in jail?
In exile, when they were exiled.
Oh, in exile. Oh,
Yeah.
and what happened in exile? Oh, yes. Oh, I forgot. In exile, it was not a very good thing because the cops were always after Lucky. and Ralph, and they tried to fit them into the drug, business. And they were not involved at all, but they knew the guys, and so Ralph and Lucky did their best to expose the names of the people. But they were always after. They did suffer. They didn't really have such a good time toward the end. They were the police were after them all the time. Yeah, and that I have a great deal of information of that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Tell us about the title, Me and the General. What do you mean by that?
Okay. Well, me is Ralph.
Mm-hmm.
General is Lucky.
Yeah.
Lucky, Luciano, for his inner circle, is known as the General, and that's where the name General came. And so when we decided on the book cover, so the book cover has Ralph on one side, Lucky on the other, and the big bastard Dewey in the center.
Very nice.
The cover represents the three guys, because it's really basically, that's what the book is really about. And then the rest is wonderful, the surroundings and all that. But I think historically, it's good to know what really happened. They never talked about this trial. They just mention it here and there.
Yeah.
What I can remember what I wrote.
Yeah, exactly. Let me ask you, is there a message or lesson that this biography looks to impart upon its readers about life, about choices, about fate?
Well, I think I have a lot. I think I have a lot of things to say. I think it opens up your mind. You see, I'm first generation. I'm first generation Sicilian, and my parents are immigrants. Okay, and so I am well aware, although my parents were fantastic, working people and all that, many of them didn't take that road, take that road. Maybe they didn't have the intellect, or what, and they went this way. I feel sorry for those people.
Mm-hmm.
But I also I enjoy the immigrants, those immigrants, how many of them made wonderful things of their lives, with doing the right things and working hard and not expecting, and I think it has a lot. The book shows a lot about these families,
Yeah.
It's good, but at the same time, it's fun because if you think of Ralph as he's growing up, and dancing and having a ball, and I think it's a good biography about about somebody who made something of himself, made a name of himself,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
and that's why he wanted me desperately to get his name, clear his name. That was so important to him.
Yeah.
Rosemary, and when he passed away, Rosemary, because I was still working,
Mm-hmm.
it was his life. So that means something.
Yeah.
So I did it. I did
Yep.
it.
Oh, you did it, and you did it well. The name of the book is Me and the General by Rosemary Valenti Guarnera. It is an amazing biography that unravels the intricate life of Ralph Liguori, a man who found himself side by side with the notorious Charles Lucky Luciano, as well as the politically ambitious Thomas E. Dewey. It is a very detailed autobiography. It was written over a number of years by Rosemary. She's been meticulous in her research, and she had a mission here to try to help clear Ralph's name from a trial that was anything but fair. Rosemary, thank you so much for joining us here today on Spotlight.
Thank you very much. I hope I didn't talk too much.
Oh, no, you did a wonderful job. I enjoyed all of your thoughts very, very much. And to the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time this time. Until next time on Spotlight.